I presume since everybody got quiet, we're ready to start. I apologize. We're going to try to get us caught up a little bit. Today is July the 17th, and this is the Committee on Ways and Means. I'm going to ask Councilwoman Jackson if she would provide an invocation for us this afternoon. Was that a moment of silence or a denial to provide an invocation?
I have that effect on people.
Yeah.
By the world. Yes, let's do prayer. Lord, we thank you that we're here lifting up our city and into your good graces. We pray for the resources that we spend on behalf of the taxpayers. We pray for each one of us to make clear and peaceful decisions, and thank you for the citizens who have turned out tonight to be in support of all that we do. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Councilwoman. Let's see. Next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes from June 19th. Is there a motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? And the ayes have it. Item 3 is bids and purchases. And let me just quickly, before we move forward through bids and purchases, I want to bring to everybody's attention, in your package there was a slight error on item 3D. And on your table or your desks you will have a corrected version that's associated with short-term rental software. So they've provided that corrected version for you. And so is there a motion for bids and purchases, and we can ask some questions?
I move for approval of those 6 items.
All right, any discussion? Councilman Moody?
Yeah, I looked at that. I had already seen that when at 55, if you look, you're going to double fund the very senior center, it looked like. But when you look at this, the amended piece, and I just call everybody's attention, we got the results of the selection committee, and it really has to do with short-term rental. But if you go back in minority business report that the contractor or vendor submitted, they said that the contract, that the minority participation was $10,000, which represented 20% of the contract. So I assume in the request, or the request for proposal, it set up to $65,000. Now this has been changed to where it is 55 and 20% would be 50. I was just concerned as to what was going on there and what the actual number was and what the process was in this case. Thank you.
It was the usual process, Councilmember Moody. The actual cost for the software will be $50,000. We added an additional $5,000 for any travel expenses if we have to bring these folks. They agreed to, I believe, 5 days for free. But if we have to bring them back to testify in front of the judge or any of those items, we added some additional funds to allow those transactions to take place.
But that was not part of the contract itself, was it? Or
yes, sir. It's a not to
mileage figure in there. Is that what? I didn't see that.
There's a unit price of no more than $750 per day, and we have to pay for expenses as well.
I would also point out that if you look at page, my package is page 49, I believe. It says, hold on, then I'll get to it. Yeah, it's actually page 50 on my book. It's paragraph 3, compensation and payment terms. It says this agreement authorized payment not exceeding. It has $55,000 written out there.
Yes, sir. But
then the output says only $55. I don't know if that's important or not, but
we'll correct that, sir.
Yeah, I mean that's a little bit of a difference. Thank you.
Anything else?
All right. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, the ayes have it. Item 4 is Carter fiscal year 2019 budget. Do we have anybody who to make a presentation on the budget? Any
Mr.
comments?
Mitchum is here if you have any questions about the budget. It's in your packet. I don't know if you have, and he sent a memo both to council and to the mayor. I don't know if council has any questions, but either one of us can answer them.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the ayes have it. Item 5 is budget finance revenue collection, approval of additional cost to design construction temporary park and ride location, amount of $18,200. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The ayes have it. Office and Cultural Affairs, approval to accept a $5,000. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? The ayes have it. Item 7. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? The ayes have it. Item 8. Any discussion? Moving right along. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? The ayes have it. Item 9. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? The ayes have it. Item 10, Parks and Capital Projects, approval design contract with Loyo Architects in the amount of $277,418 for Phase 1 design, Station 8. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? The ayes have it. Public service approval change order number 1 for Palmetto Gunite. All right, Councilman Moody?
Can I get a little bit of an explanation that they saw one new manhole cover for $173,000, the contract went from 74 to almost 250. What? That was an expensive manhole cover.
Do we have the project manager on here?
I'm the project manager on that. We actually found several sewer laterals running through the pipe, so we had to add 3 or 4 more manholes and then line the pipe to keep the pipe from collapsing. So that's why the extra money is in there.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? And the ayes have it. Item 13, consideration of amendment to the operating agreement between the City of Charleston and Gilliard Management Corporation. Any discussion? Mr. Mayor. I think we've got 2 others who...
That's right, Mr. Chairman. Myself, same thing on the board.
Oh, my apologies. Okay. We'll hold that. We'll be right back. Yeah. Fire Department approval for memorandum of understanding between... Well, let me at least read it if y'all wanted to hear so bad about it. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? The ayes have it. Okay, so who seconded number 12? Okay. All right, 13, did we have a motion? Yes. Okay, so now discussion. We had 3 who were in conflict of interest, and we want to, Mr. Mayor, do you have some comments you want to start with, or you're going to recuse yourself from making the comment? Okay.
I need to recuse myself.
Okay. We've got a motion on the floor. Okay, I'll open it up for discussion. Councilman Shade?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this occurred before I became a member of City Council. I'm just asking some questions, make sure I understand the dynamics of all of this. And I know that Councilmember Gregory has made this proposal. And maybe if he can make a presentation, that may help us a little bit with... I did. Yes, sir. And Mr. Bernard's supplemental. All right, well, I'll ask a question. So,
not be any different.
right, so maybe Ms. Wharton, is she available? I'll get right at you. All right, so are we committed now to a dollar figure to support the Gilliard?
We are not.
Is that part of the agreement as it stands right now either?
There is not a dollar amount in the current agreement right now.
So, but we just have, and I think Mr. Dudley's letter, that there was an understanding of sorts with when we did the construction on the Gilliard.
I guess so. I mean, I don't know that. There was. I don't know that it's even on.
It's on. It's on.
Is it on? Is that better? Because we couldn't hear Gary either.
Speak into it.
Okay.
All right, so back to my question. So there was not even an informal understanding that we would be committed to it?
I can't answer that question because I wasn't a part of those conversations. So I really can't answer that question.
Mr. Gravy, can you?
You answer this question for me. What have we been supplying the Gilead with annually?
So we have in the past, with tourism dollars, $1.4 million that you all approved during the budget process. We also pay the utilities on the building. We pay a lease payment for the lighting equipment, and we'll start paying a lease payment for the sound equipment that they just purchased, or we just purchased.
And the 1.4 is specifically for operating?
Yes.
Okay. And what I propose is that we formalize an agreement, which really was a...
I don't know who that is. I don't know if it's me or you.
That may be
Mine is just simply a better business model. Instead of us having to deal with the allocation annually without a specific amount, based upon what we have been providing in the past, which is 1.4 mil, I just want to formalize an agreement between the city and the corporation. It's a better business model to me, because at least it allows anyone that might want to invest to clearly see that the operating expenses will be taken care of by the city on an annual basis.
Councilmember.
How many, this question for Ms. Morton, how many years in a row have we given the 1.4 million?
For the last 2 years, we've done 1.4.
What about before that?
In 2015, we did 1.1, and in 2016, we did 1 million.
So the number's going down actually a little bit, but...
No, it's not, it's going up.
Oh, you said it was at 1.0, then 1.1, then 1.4 consistently the last 2 years.
The last 2 years has been 1.4.
Okay. So it makes sense. I mean, these numbers didn't just come out of nowhere. There had to have been some sort of, these numbers didn't just fall out of the sky. I mean, I believe there was some sort of agreement there. And also, I don't think that we can say that because we pay the light bill, they should get any less money, because we utilize that facility just as much as they do. We've got so many city offices over there.
That's just the Gilead portion that we pay. Yeah, we pay for the whole building, but we pay for that as well. So they're two separate pots.
Okay, I didn't know that. But what I'll say is I think we need to put it in writing, and we need to keep this going, because what kind of statement are we making if we're not putting some money in to the Gilead? I mean, they do so much for our city. They create so much tourism dollars. We just need to. We need to keep this going. It's been a great revitalization of downtown, and I think they're doing a great job over there. And we've been putting the money in. I don't understand why we can't keep going, guys.
Just for the benefit of the committee, let me make, because I think there was some question as to sort of the history, the process, et cetera. It was brought to my attention a letter from May 1st, 2015 that was actually from our Assistant Clerk of Council, Jennifer Cook, to Mr. Bedard. It was specific to the operating agreement. And I'm going to read two sentences that'll help, I think, some of this discussion. It says, funding associated with support of GMC's operations of the Gilead as it relates to this agreement must be recommended by the mayor to council and approved by council in the overall annual funds appropriation process each year. City financial investment to aid in the operation should be expected to be required annually moving forward, with the overall support slowly reducing after the first 3 to 5 years of operation. Now, I just want to bring that to y'all's attention. That's just sort of helps with some of the history discussion and questions. Now, and by no means am I saying that it's my position that we need to not fund the Gilead. I just wanted to point that out, that was sort of out there. Now, that was from our assistant clerk, more for clarification, I think, to Mr. Bedard. That's not sort of the legal, if you will, operating agreement. So I just wanted to point that out.
What are you reading from?
I'll share this with you. This is just a letter from. So it's really just a memo that's associated with the operating agreement. from a couple years ago. And again, that's more for y'all's history information. Councilwoman Jackson?
Yes, thank you. I guess when I was considering, obviously I agree with what everyone says, that the Gilliard is a resource and an asset that we certainly would want to continue to support for as long as they need it. But that actually, the letter that you just read, I think gave a hint to my question. I've seen this in other communities where basically you start out very strong with a wonderful earning asset like this, and then build in some sort of declining formula that if they make X, then we don't have to contribute Y in order to, really make them whole forever, but not necessarily profit on what the city is taking out of our taxpayers' support. So I didn't see anything like that in the draft of the agreement, and I didn't know if this was going to be the final, or if we could talk about inserting a couple of formulaic-driven terms that would be fair starting out, and obviously as supportive as we ever need to. I mean, if disaster strikes and the city can't entertain the visitors and the customers that come to the Gilliard in any one year, then our money would be there to balance that. So it would be sort of a floating formula that over time we would hope they'd be paying more and we'd be paying less.
Councilman Seekins? Were you finished with you want to make? Okay, thank you. Councilman Seekins?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So just in the overall scheme of things, I mean, we as a city currently at 215 plus or minus million budget annually. We don't know what's going to happen in 2019, 2020. We go through our budgeting process based on the needs of the city at that given time, projected going forward for 1 year only, although we reserve some things for 5 and 10 years down the road. I worry about making commitments like this for 10, 11, and 12 years out in the future at a sum certain that increases rather than decreases. I mean, as we sat in these chambers 10 years ago, Mr. Mayor and Mr. Chairman, we weren't thinking about sea level rise and flooding and billions of dollars in needs. And so the Gilliard is a great asset to the city. It's going to be there for time immemorial. But we've got an obligation citywide to think about on an annualized basis where our monies and resources are spent, given the actual needs of the time, and to commit this large a sum for 11 years with an escalator. And it's interesting, I just saw that letter that was distributed. It was sent by Ms. Cook, but it was copied, Mayor Riley was copied, Ms. Wharton was copied. I just think once you put it out there and you commit for 10, 11 years, we're not going backwards on this thing. So I also worry that this will encourage others to come and seek long-term commitments from the city for assistance in the missions that they've got. The Gilliard is not the only entity in the world involved in the arts or others that we have some ownership interest in and have some interest in making sure that it and they succeed. And I just don't want to overcommit. Where is this money coming from?
It's tourism dollars. It's a tax and hospitality.
100%. On a budget that we don't know in any given year what that formula is going to be coming to us, right?
That's right.
So it's impossible to tell today, just on a percentage basis of the allocation that we're getting, what percentage of that allocation we're committing 8 years down the road, 9 years down the road, 10 years down the road. This is just an absolute dollar commitment of $1.4 million with an escalator over the course of 11 years. That's what we're being asked to vote on tonight. Outside of the budget process, by the way. We're not doing this inside of the budget process, we're doing it outside of the budget process. I think we should think about that a little bit, and it gives me some concern that we're doing this outside the budget process. This is going to become the norm, that people come and ask us for funding at any time in any given year outside the budget process, and we simply approve it. So I see Ms. Sardina probably opened up a can of worms, so
I just wanted to mention, thank you very much, that, thank you. Is that better? Okay. The legal department has not had an opportunity or had any input into this agreement yet, and so we would like the opportunity to do that. A question that has come up preliminarily to us is the long-term commitment here. As City Council is aware, it does not have the authority to bind future councils if it's a matter of a governmental or legislative function. On the other hand, if it is a proprietary function, which this is most likely is, then the next analysis is it reasonable and what's the benefit to the city? So I would just ask respectfully, whatever is the inclination of council tonight, that at least the legal department have an opportunity to review the agreement and possibly come back with some terms that may be more in the interest of the city rather than the GMC. Thank you.
Councilor Gregory? Oh, excuse me, I'm sorry, Councilman Lewis, go ahead.
This lady, I've seen this lady talking. This lady, the councilmember White, all of a sudden just popped up. This issue was coming before council tonight. It seemed like legal would have had a chance to study it and give us really some guidance. So now you're saying you want to defer it, but yet y'all hadn't looked at it because Councilmember Gregory sent a letter out and he put it on the, had it added to the agenda, put it on the agenda over 2 weeks ago at the agenda committee meeting. So I mean, well, 1 week ago. So it seems like we're behind the ball, and we stay behind the ball because every meeting we got an agenda. So what are we doing? I mean, items supposed to be on the agenda that we need to study. We get an agenda and said this will be sent under separate cover. This will be sent under separate cover. So who is responsible for saying that the items that are placed on the agenda are sent to City Council, the appropriate information is sent to City Council, so when we get there, we won't have to take all night to make good decisions. Something is wrong here. Really wrong. Now, we have an item on the agenda tonight that we're discussing. Here's the letter already just popped up. Councilmember White just read. And you're saying legal hadn't had a chance to read this agreement. Have legal read that letter? Are you all familiar with that?
Yes, sir. And we're just asking for the authority to review it and negotiate it, and if possible. And that was not an opportunity that was presented to council at this point, but I'm asking for that now.
If I may, Councilman Mitchell, and then I'll come back to you, Councilman Gray. Go ahead. Oh, okay, go ahead, please.
First, my esteemed colleague, we've been worrying about drainage in this city all of my life, not the last 12 years. Okay? And we've been addressing drainage in this city as best we can, most if not all of my life. So drainage is not something that just popped up over the last 12 years. And we've been studying drainage for many years. I just wanted to make that point. The second thing
is there's a lot that we get from the Gilliard Center that you really can't put a price tag on. Particularly the educational component, the exposure of our children.
This worldwide cultural center. Okay? So I think that when we start looking at,
thank you. When we start looking at the Gilliard and 1.4, I think we've got to also look at the benefits that we get from the Gilliards. It just doesn't like me today.
I don't know, council member, I don't know what the problem is, but IT is working on it.
I believe it could be user error.
Good. And for Corporation Council, I sent this on the 11th of July, and this is the 17th. And I sent it in time for the agenda meeting. That's why it's in our packet. So for me, I suggest that there was enough time for our legal staff to take a look at it and make recommendations at this meeting, actually, if there were any amendments. I'm just not sure what the hesitation really is with regard to something that I think is just a much better model. If we get into a situation as a city where we have to cut back, we cut back. We do that in the middle of a budget cycle if we have to, if there's an emergency. I think we have the authority to be able to do that. And I don't think that this issue is any different. But I do think that it's a much better business model for the Gilliard Center, which is a part of our inventory that we protected, and we make sure that anyone else that might want to invest in it is assured that there is a constant flow of money for operations. And for me, it's just that, maybe I'm oversimplifying it, but I think that that is the reason for my letter. That is the reason for my draft agreement. Just to make sure that, like other city facilities, the Joe, the Gibbs, all of which have an agreement between the city and the corporation, and I see this as no different. So I'm a little concerned at some of the pushback that we're getting to keep our crown jewel a crown jewel. And it costs money to do that. If we have been providing the 1.4 for the last 2 years, then I think that that is a basis to make a determination as to where we should go in the next 5, 6, 7, 10 years with an inflationary clause. And I think that's also necessary. So I'm just not sure of the pushback on this. And if it goes to another committee, what would be the difference? And what are some of perhaps the suggested changes, since legal has had an opportunity to take a look at it, even if it's just a quick look? What would be some of those suggestions? I mean, the document has been with the administration now for 6 or 7 days. It's not something that was just put on our desk. And I did have some discussions before I even put it on the agenda, be it whether we agree or not. I did provide our mayor with the fact that I was about to do it. So it wasn't a shock to him either when it was placed on the agenda. So with that.
Councilman Mitchell, did you have some comments you want to make? You want? Okay, go ahead. Councilman Shea?
Okay. Let me just say this so I'm clear. I agree 100% we need to support the Gilliard and make sure it is fiscally solvent. It is, in your words, Mr. Gregory, it is a jewel, and it really is. And the work that Steve Bernard has done in his committee and the board should be applauded for how they've turned this thing around. I read his memo, and the numbers just speak for themselves. I mean, there's no question that we're on the exact right track. And what this has done for our community beyond just performing arts, bringing in students and the educational component of this. And you're right, we can't put a dollar number on those benefits. I'm just concerned about being fiscally responsible and fiscally prudent, because as I read this agreement, that if we sign this thing, or give the mayor authority to sign this agreement, maybe I'm reading it wrong, and I can't take my lawyer hat off, but it looks like we're locked in to a specific dollar amount for fiscal years 2019 and 20, $1.45 million. Then it goes up to $1.5 million in fiscal years 2021, 22, and 23. And my several questions I have along those lines are, what is the precedent for doing this? Do we have this kind of agreement for our other facilities like the Dock Street, the Gibbs, the Raleigh Park, and the aquarium? Do we have, I mean...
Well, for example, the River Dogs, which I think was mentioned, is not really comparable, because in that case, City Council recently approved improvements to the executive boxes. And the city is paying $100,000, I believe, Amy, you can correct me, over a certain period of time to reimburse the River Dogs for that. But that's a capital facility improvement. It's not an operation, stream of revenue that's been given. And so, for example, the River Dogs, Gibbs, those are different because they deal with capital expenditures as opposed to operation and maintenance. But to go back also to your question, council member, and I don't necessarily want to debate.
Before you leave that, do we have this kind of agreement for any other facility besides the River Dogs?
It's my understanding that there may be something similar with the Charleston Museum, but I have not had a chance to look at that yet and to know what the term of that is, but maybe Amy can answer that. But before I move off and let Amy talk, if that's okay, I wanted to go back to the question about the River Dogs. And while I don't want to negotiate the terms of this in open council, because the original agreement was written in a way that required or asked the Gilliard to come back every year for their appropriation, which they received, there was no backstop in the original agreement that said if there's an emergency or if funds are not available, then the city can change the amount of the revenue or the funding that's giving. And so that would be one of the questions that I would be asking the attorney for the GMC is, okay, if we have an emergency, should we not have the opportunity, if it's in the best interest of the city, to suspend paying the money for 1 year? So those are the types of questions that I would ask that we get into. Another one, sir, is they asked about amending the contract for a very robust educational program. However, there's no tie between the money that they're asking for and the robust educational program. So I would have said, hey, you're making these amendments. Shouldn't some portion of that revenue be dedicated to the educational program? So those are the things, sir, and I just didn't feel that I had the authority to go out and renegotiate, but those would be some of the things that I'd be talking about, because this did not come through the legal department initially.
Can I follow up before the next question? So do you agree with my question that the way that this document is written down, that we are legally locked in for specific amounts for specific years? So that if we have a recession and we are locked in regardless of any contingencies on this. That's how I'm reading this agreement. Would you disagree with me on that, or?
Absent the destruction of the building, I'm not sure there's any way to get out of this funding requirement.
Are you suggesting that if we have an emergency of some sort, that we as a council cannot go in and amend if necessary, regardless of what it says in the agreement? Well, are you suggesting that this council would not have the authority, okay, if we approve this today, and 2 years from now, there is a financial crisis in our city, that this body does not have the authority to make changes?
I think your option, sir, would be to terminate the agreement.
Okay, but I'm just saying there would be options there.
That is an option.
But along that line, if there's an option to try to pursue, but the way this document is written, we do not have much legal wiggle room to get out of if there is a financial problem. And that's paramount of a concern to me. I mean, I want to support the Gilliard. I want to make sure that it is solvent and that it has the money that it needs. But as Mr. Seekings just said, we're not putting this through the normal budgeting process, and we're legally locking ourselves in to a fixed number for a fixed number of years. And maybe we have some legal options to maneuver out of that, but that's what's concerning me. I'm just not sure that. I mean, we have a fiscal responsibility to
Councilmember Gregory.
The lines. Oh.
Oh, okay. Let me, are you ready now?
Yeah.
Okay, Councilman Mitchell, and then, all right, and then we'll go to Councilman Marvin.
I was listening. A lot of times, you know, when we approved this years ago, some of you all were here, and we made a whole lot of this approved for the Gilliard. Because the Gilliard was losing money every year at one time, and we had to withstand it anyway. So even if we don't do this, we still have to support it anyway. Because it's part of us, we don't have to do it anyway. So people sitting around talking about flooding, I have been flooding all my life. I want to hear from the flooding. We put so much money downtown, and I don't even want to hear that right now. We're still dealing with flooding right now. We need to go on. To me, I can support this now. That's why I told the mayor, I'm going to listen to the discussion first before I make my decision. But people are throwing some things around here, and it's making me sick. So I think we need to go ahead and just support this, because either way, we will have to do it one way or the other. If anything should ever happen, we will have to support it with the Gilliard. I mean, we need to make sure the Gilliard is sound. If something happened, under the scene, God forbid, then we have to do some change at that time. We need to go ahead and support this. At one time, I was looking to do something else with it, but now I hear all this discussion, people are throwing things around, oh, you can't do this because I don't know what's going to happen then. I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow either. None of us might even be here. But we have to go on, because we're going to have to support this Gilliard regardless of anything happens, because it's a part of the city of Charleston. It's a part of us. So we're going to have to support it. So we might as well go ahead and make it sound. And if something happens, the business start making a bunch of money, you come back and say, hey, don't make all this money now, we can have a plus and things. We can pull away from it. But right now, we have to make sure that people that it's going to be sound and solid the way it is now. That's all we're talking about.
Councilman Wagon?
Councilmember Sheehan.
Okay. Leave it up. In front of me, I'm holding the original council agenda item dated 4/2/15 for the April 13th, 2015.
Speak closer.
Pull your microphone a little bit closer.
Pull your mic closer, please.
Now, it basically says the same thing that you said in the letter, except this is from the actual document. And I'm going to read to you because it's got 2 or 3 points in here that really are essential to what we're talking about. It says the funding associated for the support of GMC's operation of the Gilead Center as it relates to this agreement must be recommended by the mayor to council and approval by council in the overall annual funds appropriation process each year. That's the same thing that the letter says. As a startup nonprofit, and the key is startup nonprofit, they're going to lose money. It's already known right here with those words. GMC will need to build up equity just as we prudently have a healthy unassigned fund balance. As it begins its use of the facility when the Gilliard Center completes construction in the fall. City financial investment to aid in its operations should be required annually moving forward with the overall support slowly reducing this time after the first 3 to 5 years of operations. Pretty optimistic. But the 8 of us that were here at that time known it was a very optimistic time for us. We figured we just built a 100-year building. And that, as was previously discussed with council, the advantage of the city teaming with the nonprofit is the expectation of private philanthropy in the coming years, allowing GMC to build strong educational and community outreach programs. Among other things, with funds privately donated for these purposes. GMC is already off to a great start with the outreach efforts. That's what was brought to us at council 4/13 and 15. So what we know, they're going to lose money the first few years. We have a very optimistic projection that our support's going to dwindle after 3 to 5 years. And the big emphasis is on outreach. Now, Mr. Gregory's letter and Mr. Bedard's follow-up letter have given us all the numbers. It's a tremendous amount of educational outreach for kids. My personal belief is we can't have philanthropy if we somehow don't show that we are going to pull our weight. If it's unknown that we, the city, are going to pull our weight, I don't know that I'm going to invest in you. I don't know about y'all. You know, there's folks around this table got a whole lot more money than I do. But, and I think that is what is driving this particular thing from Mr. Gregory right now. So in saying that, I would ask one question, guys. There's an escape clause in here for both the city and GMC. What happens if they say, uh-oh, we can't meet our obligations anymore. We gotta go. Who pays the bills, guys? Guy that owns the building is the way I see it. So then we back, as was said before, our budget was a little over 1.2 we were losing on the Gill Yard, the old Gill Yard. That was back when it was still under a special facility, before it became a public-private. And basically all we've done is carry that forward. But the rest of that story was, oh my God, look at all this office space we, the city, are going to have. Okay, that we're not going to have to pay for. We're going to make millions. We're going to save millions of dollars by not having to go downtown and rent places elsewhere. Well, we've moved in and we're not renting spaces anymore. So that was going to go to offset that $1.5 million, $1.2 million that we were losing every year, the first 2 or 3 years I was there. So that's the history. And the mayor had this sent over to me with the whole agreement, which I haven't had a total agreement with. We really do need to look at this agreement, see if there's other things in there that's going to come out in the future. But we can't do it without private help, philanthropy, if we're going to keep the educational programs at their current level. So I'm ready to call for the question. Let's see what the rest of these people think too.
Let me call on Councilmember Shealy. He hadn't had an opportunity to speak.
Thank you. You know, the Gill Yard's been a part of my life ever since I was in elementary school. Went to shows, went to concerts when I was in high school. I graduated, got my high school diploma there. The difference between back then and today was we were the only show in town back then. And if you wanted to go see something, you have to drive to Columbia and go to the Frank McGuire Arena, Carolina Coliseum or something. We only show. Now, we have a world-class facility now, and that is a draw. It pulls people to our city, and it's just beginning because it's so new in the renovations. I mean, I can remember walking into my first show there, which happened to be Porgy and Bess, I think, and thinking, wow, this is a total different place than it used to be. And for me, it's worth the investment, and it's worth us putting ourselves forward so that we can have that confidence to pull money in from other places as well and make this happen. So I'd like to see it go through.
I've kind of lost track. Will you keep track?
Councilmember Griffin.
Okay, Councilmember Griffin.
I've got another legal question because I'm just still trying to understand what you said earlier about us not being able to hold future councils. Can you explain that real quick?
Sure.
Because I've got a point I want to make, but I want to hear your thing first.
So basic South Carolina law for municipal governments is that if you are acting in what's called a governmental or legislative function, you do not have the authority to bind future councils. If you are acting in what's called a business or proprietary area, yes, you can bind future councils as long as the agreement that you're talking about long-term is reasonable in its term, it's fair, and that there's a benefit to the citizens. In this situation, you know, governmental functions, legislative functions are things like hiring employees, deciding how many police officers you want, collecting garbage, things like that. So I think that this falls, I've had an opportunity to look at it, falls more in the neighborhood of the proprietary or the business category, which means, yes, this council, if they're so minded, can move forward into a long-term agreement on the condition that council feels that the agreement would be fair, reasonable, and has some benefit to the taxpayer.
Okay, that's it. That's all I had. I just wanted to make sure we cleared that up.
Okay, let me call on Councilwoman Jackson, and I think Councilmember Seekings, and then we're getting close. Go ahead,
I wasn't going to speak twice, but I just really want to make myself clear that I was not going into this with any decision that we would not support the Gilyard to the fullest ability that it needs. Mine was actually more of a expecting that the best of the Gilyard, that, as you just said, Councilmember Sheila, we haven't seen the best days of the Gilyard, and I personally think as a fiscal agent for our taxpayers, that if the Gilyard gets to a point where they're not reliant on the same proportion for their revenue budget that they are today, then we should probably have some sort of formula that allows us to reduce, as it said, over the 3 to 5 years, see a decrease in our support. As they increase, we can decrease. And that was the only thing that I didn't see in that agreement that I'm used to seeing in similar operating support in municipalities or public bodies that are in private-public partnership. So that was my point. I would never say that we should not support the Gilyard, and I certainly didn't want to be, thought of in that direction. But I do think that we should talk seriously about how to have some sort of formula that would allow us to see a reduction when the Gilyard is thriving and producing more revenue.
Thank you. Just briefly, regardless of whether this is the Gilyard or whatever it is, I mean, I've heard the word pushback. This is debate. We have been placed in front of us an agreement a week ago that commits a serious amount of money, more than $15 million of the city funds, and to ask some questions is a legitimate way to go about this debate. This has nothing to do with being for or against the Gilyard. It's just making sure what we put in place is appropriate, accurate, defensible, fundable, all of those things. And when our corporation council says, I just like to take a look at it before we actually have someone sign it, and I don't know who's actually going to sign this because the mayor's recused himself, so it's probably our mayor pro tem, just to make sure as it goes through, and this, I can read the writing on the wall, we're going to vote to do this, but when we do it, let's just make sure we do it right. Let's make sure it goes to our council. Let's make sure that the agreement that's been drafted, which I take it was not drafted by our council, but we are funding it, make sure it goes to our corporation council for review so that when we're in place and when we're doing, we've done it right. This is a $15+ million commitment. This council rarely goes about doing something like that as quickly as this. Great, we've heard all the good reasons to do it, but please, council member, this isn't pushback, this is debate, making sure we do it right, and doing it right is the only way to do it. And we want the Gilyard to succeed, but we want to make sure it succeeds in conjunction with all our other budgetary processes, needs, and wants, because this is an 11-year commitment that we're getting into, which, as has been pointed out, sure, we can go back and vote to change it, but once it's in place, it's a contract between two people. The City of Charleston, there's a signature line, and the Charleston Gilyard Management Corporation. So the lawyer and me for sure wants to make sure it's right. So I'm going to vote in favor of this, but please let's run this by our corporation council and make sure that before it's delivered, it's reviewed, acceptable, and is done properly.
All right, thanks. Yeah, I'm going to make a couple of quick comments and I'm going to call for the question. So one of the things, and I think that without a doubt, and I see the folks from the Gilyard Management Company in the audience, let there be no mistake, there's nobody on this council that denies that the Gilyard is an important part of our city. To have a city the size of Charleston have the type of cultural facilities that we have is absolutely incredible. And quite frankly, if it wasn't for one very, very great philanthropist in our community, or to make that happen, we wouldn't have the facility that we have there today. So I would say that there, irregardless of the vote, there should be no question that this city supports the Gilliard. I'll also say that I personally have all the faith in the world of the Gilliard Management Company with Steve Bedard at the helm. And I think he's done a tremendous job while he's been there, and I think he will as he continues to be there. We're getting ready to put forward a 10-year commitment, and that may or may not exceed his time there. So we need to be mindful. But at the same time, you notice I said may or may not, and he kind of looked down. He didn't want to talk about it. Yeah. But the point being is that irregardless, this council, whether with us or 10 years from now, is not going to let the Gilliard fail, period. We're going to fund it. We're going to make sure that we always have and we always will, because it's something that for our community we're so lucky to have and blessed to have, and we won't ever deny that. So with that, I'm going to call for the question, and I'm thinking we may need a show of hands.
Let's do roll call. Okay. Councilmember White.
Aye.
Councilmember Shealy. Councilmember Lewis.
Aye.
Councilmember Mitchell.
Aye.
Councilmember Wagner.
Aye.
Councilmember Gregory.
Aye.
Councilmember Waring.
I have to abstain.
His doesn't count. Turn that microphone off.
Councilmember Seekings, just for the record, is voting aye. Councilmember Shea.
Aye.
Councilmember Griffin.
Aye.
Councilmember Moody, abstain.
I have to abstain also.
Got an A for you. Got an A for you. Okay. Councilmember Jackson. Mayor Tecklenburg has an A for you too.
All right. Motion passes. Thank you all for that.
Mr. Chairman,
Councilman Waring?
I can speak now. I really believe, and I thank you everything that you said, for everything that you said and others said in this healthy debate. But I do think we need to recognize the chairman of the board, the CFO, the members of the board, Ms. Barkley, and one person and a couple of people that's not in this room. Obviously, Ms. Martha Rivers Ingram and Mayor Rowley and others that put together the legal team, all the board members, all the people who have given to the finest public-private partnership in the history of Charleston, South Carolina. That's a long history.
Thank you. I appreciate this.
I just want to know if this means that Mr. Bedard is committing to the 10 years of being there while we're doing this. He's here, and he's fair game, so.
That was the way I understood it.
Okay, good. Excellent.
All right. Moving forward, Committee on Real Estate. Councilman Moody, Chairman Moody.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We had a vigorous meeting and a long one this afternoon. I'm going to go down these things. If anybody's got any questions, I'll be glad to answer. The first item there, the Public Works Committee took that up yesterday and spent a lot of time on it, so we just referred to them and let that issue come up through those. The request for that agreement provided with workforce housing, that is approved. Item C, the approval of that perpetual easement for that piece of property there that is tied the bike lane and the pedestrian lane into that property was approved. Item D, that's item D, and we deferred that particular item. We had some discussion there, and we're not sure exactly where we wanted to go with that, so that item was deferred. Item E, that was a sale agreement, and we agreed to sell that property. The proceeds from that will in effect stay in that area to do some other things there. That's because that's part of the right-of-way of the condemnation and part of the DOT stuff that went on there with revenue bridge and all that. Item F was approved. Item G was also approved. Item H was denied. We denied the we decided we didn't want to buy it for that number. Item I and J went into executive session, and I'll come back to those in a minute. Item K was the Children's Museum. We have agreed for that application to go forward. Item L and M, which were the purchase or sale of that, purchase or sale, I guess, of that property in the barn to the COG, and I see Mr. Mitchell over here. Might need to check, look out, we need that money back soon. So going back to the executive session on I, we went into executive session and we discussed that. We came out and we voted to purchase that land for that drainage shaft on that piece of property. The piece of property right next door to it, we are still negotiating that piece of that. That's I. And J, the last item, we received that information for information only, and no action was taken on that. So with all that, I move for approval of the real estate committee report.
I second.
Any discussion?
Did the sale of the property on Lee Street in Nassau, it's a part of the city from past, that money, if that property is sold, the money needs to go into housing and community development for affordable housing. So let's make sure that that's done.
It's part of the property we acquired in the switch out with all that DOT and those right-of-ways. So by the law and by the agreement with the DOT, that money has to stay within that kind of area where that doesn't tell us what we have to do, but it has to be spent.
We plan to go to affordable housing in that area. So
exactly.
We just need to make sure that that's what that money goes for.
Yeah, actually what this is a piece of property that's landlocked, and we basically sold
I'm familiar with the
property so they can have ingress and egress to their property, but the money will be used, and we're talking about affordable housing in there, and there's a lot of stuff that we can use it for, but that's what we're talking about.
Thank you.
That's what I wanted to. Yeah.
Councilman Mitchell?
That's why I wanted to rule too, that we keep that for affordable housing. Right now, you know how the affordable housing is, so we have control of that, we can mandate the type of affordable housing we can place in that property. One more question I'm going to ask, on 124 Spring Street, did it say, what is the AMI going to start from on that particular property or the virtual housing piece?
That's item B, on 124 Spring Street. Yeah, they were going to put, they requested authorization to the mayor to execute an agreement to provide workforce housing on that site, and we agreed to provide that workforce housing.
Did they say what they're going to start from the workforce housing, 80% to 120, or they're going to start from 60% to 120?
Is Ms. Shaw Johnson in the back? Maybe she can answer that question. Does anyone know?
I just want to make sure so everybody can hear.
Hold on one second. Let me see if we can get somebody from staff that might be able to.
I think there was like 12 units that were going to be built there, and 4 of them were going to be workforce housing. I think, wasn't that the number?
Yes.
I just want to see if we're going to start with the AMI.
The question was, what on Spring Street, what was the AMI target on those?
I believe it's 80%. Jacob, is that different from what I understand?
Gianna and Councilmember, I was trying to pull the PUD language up. I don't have the actual AMI in front of me, but we can research that. It's actually 28 total units, Councilmember Moody, and 4 of those are to be workforce. That's the total number, but I don't actually have the actual AMI, but I'll see if I can
We can bring that back, yes.
I just want to make sure that they have some AMI that's support the rent.
Yes.
Not everything can be 80% to 120%. I'm going to stop at that.
Councilwoman Jackson, you had your hand up.
No, I was going to ask Mr. Wilson.
Mr. McQueenie?
I can answer Councilmember Mitchell's question. It's 120% AMI, and the rent is 33%, which is not usually what we do. The PUD, and I went back and checked the minutes from August of 2016 before council, and you all asked questions about it. It was clear that that was what was approved as part of the PUD. There was no mistake in the document itself, and the workforce housing agreement reflects exactly what was in the PUD and what was approved by council.
I normally ask if some of the units, they place some of the units under 60%. Some of them normally do it, but they're not going to put down everything.
No, sir. It'll be 4 at 120% of AMI, 4 dwelling units at 120% of AMI, with 33% of the qualified household.
And council member, to date, we have not had a PUD that addressed a 60% AMI rental.
I'm going to make a statement here quickly, and then we can move on. I'm going to put out that all developers that are coming with housing in the city of Charleston, and they're coming in the district I represent. I'm asking them now that we need to look at some housing at 60% of the area median income. Not everything going to be 80% to 120% of AMI. But when it comes to me, I'm not going to support it. We need to still provide housing for people who need it here, who have children, who have families here. We still have to provide them too. You can't just push everybody out of the city of Charleston and run somewhere else. We need to have a mixture here of prospects of people living in the city of Charleston. So I'm just making reference. They can stand it out and say, yes, Councilman Mitchell said, yes, I did. And this is going to happen with it. When you come in District 4, and you're building any type of house in District 4, from this day on, I'm asking them now to even pay some housing in there that's going to be around 60% of American area median income.
All right, thank you. All right, I'm going to call for the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? And the ayes have it. If there's no more business to come before this committee, we'll stand adjourned.